A few weeks, that's all it takes. A football tournament appears on television and suddenly the entire planet seems to revolve around it. Cities stop, schools pause lessons, people wake up at ridiculous hours, friends become rivals, strangers become teammates. For a month, football feels bigger than politics, bigger than entertainment, sometimes even bigger than everyday life itself. And somehow, in the middle of all that emotion, FIFA makes billions. Not millions, billions. Now here's the strange part. Most fans assume they understand why. The tickets, the sponsors, the television deals. Simple. At least that's what I thought. But the deeper I looked into the World Cup's business model, the stranger the story became. Because FIFA didn't build one of the most successful sports businesses in history by selling football. At least not in the way most people imagine. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why countries compete to host the tournament.
Why corporations spend fortunes just to have their logo near it. And why the most valuable thing FIFA owns might not be football at all. But before we get there, we need to go back. Not to a boardroom, not to a billion-dollar sponsorship deal. To a much simpler time. The first World Cup.
Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and cross into understanding.
If you place that tournament next to the modern World Cup, they would barely look related. Only 13 teams participated. Most players traveled by ship. There were no giant marketing campaigns, no worldwide television audience, no global brands fighting for exposure. Just a football competition trying to establish itself. At the time, nobody was talking about commercial empires. Nobody was calculating television rights. Nobody was discussing global sponsorship portfolios. The goal was simple: create an international football tournament. That's it. And for a while, that's exactly what the World Cup was. A sporting event. An important one, certainly, but still just a sporting event. Which raises an obvious question. If the World Cup started so modestly, how did it become one of the most valuable properties in global sports? The answer isn't football. Football was already popular. The answer is something else. Something that changed almost every major sport on Earth.
Television. Today, it's hard to imagine a world without live sports broadcasts. But there was a time when the people inside the stadium were the audience. Then television arrived. And suddenly the audience wasn't 80,000 people. It wasn't even a million. It became tens of millions. Then hundreds of millions. Then billions. And that changed everything. Because the moment billions of people started watching the same event, a football tournament stopped being just a football tournament. It became a media product. Think about it. A stadium has limits. A broadcast doesn't. You can only sell so many seats. You can sell television rights over and over and over again. Different countries, different networks, different markets, different languages. And every time the audience grew, the value grew with it. At first, the numbers were modest. Then they weren't. Broadcasters realized something. The World Cup wasn't simply attracting football fans. It was attracting attention on a scale almost nothing else could match. And attention is valuable, extremely valuable. The more viewers the World Cup attracted, the more networks were willing to pay. The more networks paid, the more powerful FIFA became. A cycle had begun, and every 4 years, it got bigger.
But here's the interesting thing. Television made FIFA richer. It didn't make FIFA an empire. That happened later, because eventually somebody inside FIFA looked at those enormous audiences and saw something most people didn't. Not football, opportunity. And that brings us to one of the most important figures in this entire story, a man named João Havelange. If you're a casual football fan, you might never have heard of him, yet his influence is everywhere. In many ways, the modern commercial World Cup begins with him. When Havelange became FIFA president in 1974, he looked at football differently. Where others saw a tournament, he saw a global product. Where others saw matches, he saw markets. And where others saw fans, he saw a worldwide audience that had barely been monetized. That perspective changed everything. Because Havelange wasn't interested in keeping FIFA small. He wanted expansion, growth, scale. And he understood something before many others did. Football was becoming global, truly global. Not just in Europe, not just in South America, everywhere. The opportunity was enormous. The challenge was figuring out how to capture it. And the solution would transform the World Cup forever. Because television wasn't the only industry paying attention. Some of the world's biggest companies were watching too. And they wanted in.
Selling emotion. Imagine you're running one of the biggest brands in the world. You have a product to sell. You need customers in dozens of countries.
Normally, that means running separate campaigns everywhere. Different languages, different markets, different strategies. Then the World Cup arrives. Suddenly, billions of people are paying attention to the same thing at the same time. That's incredibly rare. In fact, it's one of the rarest things in modern media, and FIFA realized it. The organization wasn't just sitting on a football tournament anymore. It was sitting on one of the largest audiences on Earth. Companies quickly understood the opportunity. Sponsors weren't buying goals. They weren't buying trophies. They weren't even buying football. They were buying association. Association with excitement, association with victory, association with moments people would remember for decades. Think about some of the most famous World Cup images ever. The celebrations, the tears, the upsets, the iconic goals. Now think about how many corporate logos were present during those moments. That's not an accident. That's the business model.
Why countries pay billions. And the more emotionally powerful the tournament became, the more valuable those sponsorships became, because people remember emotions better than advertisements. A company connected to a historic World Cup moment isn't just buying exposure, it's buying a place inside a memory. That's powerful. But something still doesn't quite make sense. Television rights explain part of FIFA's growth. Sponsors explain another part, yet neither explains why FIFA eventually became so dominant. For that, we need to look somewhere else. The host nations. This is where the story starts getting strange. Imagine creating a product so valuable that customers compete to spend billions of dollars on it. Not corporations, governments, entire countries. That's effectively what happened with the World Cup. Every hosting race became a competition. Countries submitted bids, politicians made promises, cities proposed giant projects, massive infrastructure plans appeared. New stadiums, transportation systems, security operations, tourism campaigns. The numbers kept growing and growing and growing.
At first, that sounds like a perfect deal for everyone involved. Host the World Cup, welcome millions of visitors, boost tourism, improve infrastructure, celebrate football. But the reality has always been more complicated. Some projects succeed, others struggle. Some benefits last, others disappear surprisingly quickly. Economists have debated this for years, and honestly, that's not the most fascinating part. The fascinating part is that countries keep bidding anyway, even after seeing the costs, even after seeing the risks, even after seeing mixed results in previous tournaments. Why? Because the World Cup offers something money alone cannot easily buy: global attention. For a few weeks, the world's cameras point in your direction. Your cities, your culture, your country. That's a powerful attraction. And while host nations often shoulder enormous infrastructure costs, FIFA sits at the center collecting revenue from global commercial rights. Broadcasting, sponsorships, licensing, hospitality, partnerships. The deeper I looked into the system, the more I realized something. FIFA wasn't simply organizing a tournament. It had positioned itself at the center of an entire economic ecosystem. Broadcasters needed FIFA. Sponsors needed FIFA. Hosts needed FIFA. Fans needed the World Cup. That's an extraordinary position to occupy. And yet we're still missing the most important piece. The piece that explains why this business model became so successful. The piece that turns a profitable tournament into an empire. Because television isn't the answer. Sponsors aren't the answer. Host nations aren't the answer. They're all symptoms of something bigger, something much more valuable. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it.
The real product is attention. Not football. Attention. I know that sounds strange. At first, it sounded strange to me too. After all, people tune in to watch football. Not advertisements, not business strategies, football. But think about what every major player in this story is actually buying. Broadcasters buy viewers. Sponsors buy access to viewers. Host nations buy exposure to viewers. Everyone is chasing the same thing: attention. The World Cup is simply the mechanism that gathers it. And once FIFA learned how to package that attention, the organization became extraordinarily powerful. But even that isn't the smartest part, because FIFA possesses something many businesses spend decades trying to create: scarcity. Think about it. The World Cup happens once every 4 years. 4 years! That's an eternity in modern entertainment. Movies come and go, television shows release new seasons, sports leagues play every year. The World Cup disappears, then returns, then disappears again. And somehow that makes people want it even more. The waiting becomes part of the experience. Kids become teenagers between tournaments. Players enter their prime. Legends retire. Entire football eras rise and fall.
By the time the next World Cup arrives, anticipation has been building for years.
The smartest trick FIFA ever learned. That's not a weakness. It's an asset. Maybe FIFA's greatest asset. Because scarcity creates value. If the World Cup happened every year, it would still be popular. But would it feel magical? Would billions of people organize their schedules around it? Would it dominate global conversation in the same way? Probably not. Part of the tournament's power comes from knowing you can't have it whenever you want. And that's where FIFA's business empire becomes truly fascinating. The organization didn't just build around football. It built around anticipation, around rarity, around the feeling that this event matters more because it doesn't happen often. That's a difficult thing to manufacture. Most companies can't do it. Most sports can't do it. The World Cup can, which helps explain why broadcasters keep paying more, why sponsors keep arriving, why countries keep competing, and why FIFA's revenues continue reaching levels that would have seemed unimaginable decades ago.
The future of the empire. Today, the World Cup is expanding again. More teams, more matches, more markets, more opportunities. The business side continues growing, and that's creating a new debate. Some people see expansion as progress. Others worry that too much growth could weaken what made the tournament special in the first place. It's a fair concern, because the very thing that made the World Cup so valuable might also be the thing most vulnerable to change. Its rarity, its uniqueness, its ability to feel different from everything else.
The question that could change everything. The next challenge isn't building a bigger World Cup. FIFA already knows how to do that. The challenge is preserving the feeling that made people care in the first place, because empires don't usually struggle to grow. They struggle to keep their identity while growing. And maybe that's the question that will define the next era of football. Not whether FIFA can make more money, not whether the World Cup can become bigger, but whether the tournament can remain the one event that makes billions of people stop what they're doing and pay attention at exactly the same moment. Because that's the secret FIFA discovered decades ago. And if that attention ever fades even slightly, the entire business model changes with it. The World Cup looks like a football tournament, and for fans, it always will be. But behind the goals, the trophies, and the unforgettable moments sits something much larger. One of the most successful attention businesses ever built. And the remarkable thing is that most people never notice it. They're too busy watching the football. Which, when you think about it, might be the smartest part of the entire strategy.
Subscribe for a different perspective in every video.